Neoprene rubber with a canvas inner ply was used to construct inflatable rafts in the 1800s. The first inflatable raft to cruise through Grand Canyon was piloted by Amos Berg, and Amos went through the canyon with Buzz Holmstrom in 1938. This type of raft, called a military 10-man, flooded Army surplus stores right after World War II. They quickly became very popular amongst river runners because you could row them into rocks and they wouldn't break. Dick Griffith rode a rubber raft through lava falls in 1951 and has the first for doing that. Just a year later, Georgie White rode this inflatable raft through Grand Canyon, and she did it with a guy named Elgin Pierce. That was in 1952. So this boat may look sad, but it's the happiest boat of its kind on the planet. And that's because the rubber that this boat is made of, these boats typically get all the air out of them and they're rolled up into this big mass. And this boat has been painstakingly worked on by the conservators of the National Park Service. What they did is, where they have these little air valves here, little caps to put air in the boat, they filled this boat with little beads of polyester, and that allowed the boat to maintain its shape. There's not another boat on the planet that's been preserved this well. So you're thinking, well, I want to see the chambers all puffed up. It actually puts a lot of stress on the boat and the seams when you do that. You don't want it completely flat and rolled up. So here it's unrolled, it can stretch out and relax, and it has the foam in it to hold it in shape. This is a happy boat. So with this boat, again, this is military surplus from World War II. This is the valve that fills the entire boat with air. Not the thwarts. 1, 2, 3 thwarts. Each thwart had its own valve. But this one valve kept this entire boat full of air. Now, what happened is people realized early on, well, wait a minute, if I have a hole in this boat, the entire boat is going to deflate. So what boat manufacturers did is they said, okay, we're going to put a baffle in here, and we're going to have a chamber here and a chamber there, and there, and there, and there. So there were now 4 compartments with 4 valves. But that was in the future. And this is an original boat. So you get a chance to see this one valve. Now, typically there'd be a little pump, and the pump was kind of small with a little T-handle on it and a little hose, and you'd put that hose in there. But there are photos of early river trips. They didn't have a pump, and they simply used their mouth on the valve, and it took them quite a while with dizzy heads to fill this full of air. So Georgie White had a really difficult upbringing, and she lost her daughter in a hit-and-run motor vehicle accident in Los Angeles. The daughter was 15 or 16, and Georgie was very close to her daughter. She was divorced from her husband. Not long after that, Georgie met a man named Harry Ailson, and Harry was boating on the Colorado River and introduced Georgie to boating, and Georgie just took off with that whole concept. In 1952, it's possible that this is the very boat that Georgie took through Grand Canyon. She would have been the first woman to row a boat through Grand Canyon ever that we have a documentation for. And it was a difficult trip for them. Georgie flipped the raft in Hance Rapid, again, another first that we have documentation for. Elgin was able to swim to shore and run along the shore. Georgie was floating down through the rapid, hanging on to the raft. And the raft got in this little eddy at the bottom of the rapid. And Georgie was going around with the raft, and Elgin was running along the shore. And he came down, and the two of them were able to get the boat to shore, but it was upside down. And all their gear was tied in, but it was holding the boat upside down. It was late in the day. And they were able to reach under the boat, untie a couple of bags of stuff, and at least have a little food for the night. They slept right there on the beach with the boat kind of pulled up on the shore. And in the morning, they were able to get more stuff out from under the boat and eventually turn it over. This is a heavy boat. It's going to weigh hundreds of pounds. It was hard for two people to do, but they did. And then they went down to Phantom Ranch, and they were very, very, very happy to be there. Later on, they got to Lava Falls. They were ahead of the next trip behind them, and they had to wait at Lava Falls for 7 days for the next trip to show up. And then they all portaged the rapid together. Georgie went on to have an amazing career, leading commercial river trips through Grand Canyon, and she was the woman of the river. There was another real interesting feature about these early military surplus rubber rafts. If you were going to row them with 10-foot oars, how did you hook the oar to the raft? And Harry Ailson came up with this idea of taking a piece of rubber, a big sheet of rubber, and bolting a 4x4 block onto it with a little place for an oar lock right there. And you would glue this whole block hooked onto this sheet of rubber. You would glue this down onto the boat, and suddenly you had an oar lock. Well, the trouble was the block would rip out of the rubber here, or the rubber wouldn't stick, the whole thing would come off. And it wasn't long after this, which is the early 1950s, this concept, that an actual frame was built to sit on top of the boat. And river runners would glue on little patches with D-rings, and then they could hook the D-ring to the frame. And the oar lock would be hooked on the frame, and that concept is still used today.